A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine.
In the 1980s, the gay community is staring down a death sentence as the AIDS crisis rages.
If I knew all the facts, maybe I wouldn't be here.
They were once legends with packed tours, but when they were found to be HIV positive, the world turned its back on them. These black R&B singers once reached the top, selling millions of records, being called the breath of the century by experts. And then, they disappeared quietly because of the most terrifying disease of the 20th century, combined with silent discrimination. A famous artist in New York died after many years of fighting HIV, without relatives, without a funeral. Another, after revealing that she was a lesbian and HIV positive, was cut from all contracts and died in poverty. And those are just two small slices of the tragic picture. The 23 stories behind them are more tear-jerking than any movie you have ever seen. And if you feel they deserve to be remembered, please like and share so that more people can understand them. 23. Sharon Redd. The ghost of disco behind the dim lights. They used to call her the Queen of Harlem Disco. Sharon Redd was not only a powerful and captivating singer, but she was also one of the first black female artists to take disco R&B beyond the queer nightclub scene and into the hearts of the traditional black audience. Hits like Never Give You Up and Love Insurance rocked dance floors across America. But behind the bright lights of the stage was a woman who suffered silently. As a lesbian in a male-dominated music industry, Sharon had to keep her private life a secret. And when her first cough appeared, no one, including her, knew it would be the beginning of the end. One night in 1991 at a New York club, Sharon suddenly coughed violently in the middle of a performance and could not continue singing. The audience thought she was exhausted, but her close friend and assistant recalled that backstage, Sharon sat quietly, sweating, gasping for breath, and said only one sentence. "I'm afraid this is exactly like the symptoms of..." She didn't finish her sentence, but her eyes were full of worry. After that, Sharon disappeared from the public spotlight. News of her illness was kept secret. Close friends said she had PCP pneumonia, a common disease among people with HIV at the time. But the public didn't know. She still received fan letters. Some even blamed her for disrespecting the audience by canceling shows. They didn't know that at that time she was in an isolation room in a hospital in Manhattan, where no one dared to come near. Doctors confirmed that Sharon Redd died on May 1, 1992, of AIDS-related pneumonia. The funeral was not lavish. No major news media reported it. It was as if the whole world had forgotten her. Sharon once told a reporter, "If I were allowed to live as myself, I think my voice would be even stronger." Those words now only resonate in the hearts of those who truly loved her, not just for her music, but for her person. Sometimes forgetting is not about memories, but about the silence of a society. Remember Sharon not just as a disco queen, but as a woman who died in silence because she was guilty of two crimes, being gay and having HIV. She did not deserve to die like that. No one deserves it. If you ever dance to her tunes, please share this story so that Sharon Redd's voice will not be buried again. 22. Khloe Zubelo. The saxophone in a rotting body. She was the rebellious soul of 80s New York, punk musician, performance artist, black transgender activist. Khloe Zubelo was not afraid of the judgmental eyes of the crowd. She once declared, "I am not straight, I am not gay. I am the truth that people are avoiding." As the lead singer of the band Transistors, Khloe used her music and her body to fight gender stereotypes, medical prejudices, and social indifference. But the bitter truth was that she couldn't escape the tragedy that was quietly spreading through her blood. In 1987, after a performance on the Lower East Side, Khloe began to feel physically exhausted. It wasn't from alcohol or drugs, as many people thought. She passed out on stage and was taken to Bellevue Public Hospital. Doctors suspected a lung infection, but after a blood test, a young doctor, a new intern, quietly took the results and left the room. Khloe was diagnosed as HIV positive. But no one told her directly. The news was passed on, a piece of paper quietly placed on the table. It read, We recommend that you go to the LGBT Support Center for counseling. No words of comfort. No doctor dared touch her hand after that. In the years that followed, Khloe lived, performed, wrote songs, and spoke out for the Black transgender community, a group that had been marginalized both medically and mentally during the AIDS epidemic. She survived for decades thanks to her resilience and antiretroviral drugs. But secondary illnesses began to eat away at her. In February 2011, Khloe died in her small Manhattan apartment. She was surrounded by her partner, a lesbian, and an elderly dog. No major newspapers reported it. No posthumous awards were given. Khloe once said, "I am living proof that the medical system has failed." But because of that, she is also a living example of courage. She did not die of HIV. She died because the world has refused to listen to people like her for too long. We may not fully understand the pain of a trans person living with HIV, but at least we can choose not to be silent. Don't let Khloe be forgotten. Because she lived, we can know the truth. 21. Timothy Blair, Sweet Tea, the unwritten rap dream. They once called her the first rap voice in a world that no one wants to see. Timothy Blair, also known in the underground as Sweet Tea, is not only a rare black female trans rapper who dares to stand on stage, but also the first to put the story of a trans person living with HIV into every word. In the 1990s, when hip-hop was dominated by ultra-masculine music, she was a slender, curly-haired figure who took to the stage in tight black leather, grabbed a microphone, and rapped about love, isolation, and the disease that was eating away at her friends one by one. At first, no one noticed her rapid weight loss. She ate little, saying she had to stay in shape for her shows. But her close friend, DJ Marlon, said that in the winter of 1996, after a night at a small Atlanta nightclub, Sweet Tea passed out in her dressing room. When she woke up, she quietly said, "I think I got it." She didn't cry, she just stared into the mirror and then laughed. A bitter laugh. The cause of her illness is unclear, but many believe it was from a previous relationship, a man she had loved before she could afford regular hormone injections. After her diagnosis, she kept her HIV+ status out of the public eye. But she began writing more. Her lyrics became sharp, filled with fear, anger, and a desire to live authentically. In 1999, Sweet Tea died in an empty hospital room. No record deal, no official album release. The only person present was DJ Marlon, who kept her last notebook. In it was a line written in red ink. "If I were a straight white man, I would be saved." Sweet Tea was not honored at any award ceremony, but in the hearts of trans people of color who knew her, she was a silent torch burning in the darkest night. She once wished that one day the world would listen to someone like her rap, but now all we can do is listen to the silence she left behind. If you ever feel left behind just because you're yourself, think of Sweet Tea 20. Blackberry, the silent note storyteller. Blackberry is not a household name, but for those who visited San Francisco in the late 70s, his voice, warm, deep, and gentle as a lullaby, was a haven for wounded souls. Blackberry was not part of the glamorous world of showbiz. He was a musician, an activist, a queer femme-presenting man living and writing for the marginalized. When the HIV/AIDS pandemic swept through the LGBTQ+ community, he didn't run away. He stayed, singing in hospitals, at shelters, and at the funerals of friends. But what few people know is that he also lived with HIV. One morning in 1987, after an emotional night of performing at a small tea house by the bay, he started bleeding from his gums. A small mouth ulcer wouldn't heal. A nurse friend suggested he get a blood test. When the doctor gave him the results, he asked only one question: "How many of my friends have died because of this?" The doctor didn't answer. He bowed his head, nodded slightly. Not a single sigh. Blackberry didn't hide, but he didn't preach either. He sang quietly for people like him, black, queer, HIV positive, living on the city's margins. His song, "It's Okay," became a spiritual meditation for many who lived positively. Despite his increasingly failing health, he continued to sing and held community sharing sessions. In 2021, Blackberry passed away in the arms of his close associates in Oakland. No one said he died of HIV, but everyone knew. His death carried the shadow of decades of struggle. No major news coverage. But at a small memorial service at a LGBTQ+ community center, they played a recording of the last song he sang. In it, he whispered, "Don't be afraid. We still have voices." Blackberry didn't need a big stage. He just needed to be heard. And if you've heard this story, please share it, so that Blackberry and others like him no longer have to whisper in the dark. 19. Lady Cateria, the drag queen with a heart of glass. In the 90s, if you ever stepped foot in La Escuelita, the legendary Latinx and queer club in New York, you would have seen her. Standing on a glittering stage was Lady Cateria, sky-high hair, piercing eyes, and proud lips. She was more than just a drag artist. She was a living symbol of pride in an era when transgender people and drag queens were often treated as laughingstocks. But beneath the elaborate makeup was a woman battling an invisible enemy, HIV. In 1994, Cateria began to feel dizzy when she stepped on stage. Once, she fainted right after her performance at the Miss City Drag Queen Finals. Her doctor recommended a full blood test. She refused several times, blaming it on a lack of sleep and stress. But when she began to suffer from persistent fevers and temporary loss of vision in her left eye, she had to leave. The result? HIV positive. She kept the news to herself, but in 1996, when her health began to decline, Cateria suddenly went public with her diagnosis on the stage at La Escuelita. That night, the audience stood in silence. In a bright red evening gown, Cateria said into the microphone, "If I don't speak up, there will be younger sisters in this community who will die like me, in silence, in fear." From then on, she was no longer just a drag queen. She was a warrior. In 1999, Lady Cateria died in a hospital for transgender people with HIV/AIDS. Her funeral was the largest drag parade in the history of Manhattan's Latinx neighborhood. No one talked about a cross-dresser who died of AIDS anymore. People stood on the side of the road, waving and saying, "She was our queen." Lady Cateria did not live long, but she lived and died, a symbol of courage. If you're ever afraid to speak your truth, remember the moment she stood on stage, her hands shaking but her eyes looking straight ahead. She was not afraid of anyone, and she didn't deserve to die of fear. Let's keep her name alive by telling this story. Don't let her be just a pretty dress that once existed. 18. Vichy Lane, the voice. No one wants to play. They call her the diva who was banned from the airwaves. Vichy Lane is a white transgender singer, but her musical and social contributions transcend race, especially in the poor black community that was left behind during the HIV/AIDS epidemic. Once a soprano who rocked the auditoriums of drag shows in Indiana, Vichy didn't just sing, she stood up. She founded Change for Change, an organization that has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for HIV victims living on the margins of society. But amid the glamorous makeup and powerful speeches, there was a body rotting away inside. Vichy began to notice things were wrong in late 2003. A red rash appeared around her neck that wouldn't go away. Then she had diarrhea that lasted 10 days. At first, she thought it was just food poisoning. But when her hair started falling out and she lost weight, despite eating normally, she knew something was wrong. One afternoon, after performing a charity show at a small church in southern Indiana, she passed out backstage. When she woke up, she was in the emergency room. The doctor held her hand and whispered, "Your viral load is very high. You probably contracted HIV a few years ago." Despite the news, Vichy did not give up. "I'm not surprised," she told a close friend. "I've lived too long in silence and given too much away. What saddens me most is that if I didn't have health insurance, I would never have known I was infected." She then began a campaign to fund HIV treatment for the poor and undocumented transgender people. But her body was failing. In March 2017, Vichy died at home from lung complications. The funeral was small, with no cameras or television. But on the memorial stage, a clip of her last song was shown. The song was called "You Don't Know What Love Is." Vichy once said, "If I die, at least let my voice live on for those who have no voice." Today, we do just that. Let's listen not only to her song, but also to the cry for help that society once ignored. Let's remember her as an icon who didn't run away, even though she knew the truth could kill her. 17. Lee Davids, the dancer in the silent battlefield. She is known as the last voice for South African trans people who died in the dark. Lee Davids is not a pop star, but for the poor trans community living around Cape Town, she is a light at the end of the tunnel. As a performer and activist, Lee has not only stood on stages, she has stood in markets, hospitals, slums, talking about HIV, about love, about the right to live authentically. But no one expected that she had the disease she was trying to save others from. She first noticed the signs one September morning. She woke up sweating despite the cold. There was blood in her saliva. A small cut on her leg from a fall refused to heal. She went to the community clinic, which often turned away trans people, and waited for 5 hours. Finally, a nurse looked at her records and said quietly, "You are infected." Lee hung her head. She did not cry. She did not ask why. Maybe she knew. Maybe she had guessed. But hearing it was still a silent stab. Despite her illness, she continued to perform, still shared, but her health declined rapidly. In 2018, she was hospitalized with a severe lung infection. At one point, she had to cut short the end of her performance and use a breathing tube. She joked to colleagues, "If I die, at least I die in the lights." But by early 2019, her body could no longer take it. She died in a transgender health center. On her bedside table was a pamphlet about equal health care rights that she had planned to read at a canceled conference. No one read it to her that day. Friends once said that Lee Davids did not need an instrument to touch people's hearts. She just stood there, breathing, and her presence was a symphony of courage. She did not die of HIV. She died because the world had waited too long to heal people like her. If you thought HIV/AIDS was a disease of the past, look back at Lee. She is living proof that stigma still exists, and silence is still a death sentence. 16. Prudence, Nobantu Mabele, the first person to say, "I am positive." In 1992 in South Africa, a black woman walked onto the stage at a national health conference. No one knew who she was. But then she said one sentence that silenced the room. "My name is Prudence. I am a woman. I am Zulu. I am HIV positive." In an era when people with HIV were considered unclean, that statement was not only brave, it was revolutionary. Prudence was not only the first person to come out publicly with HIV in South Africa. She was also an activist, a spoken word artist, and the founder of the Positive Women's Network, an organization that supports HIV-positive women, especially transgender, lesbian, and women who have been raped. But her life did not start out in the spotlight. She was a trainee nurse who was fired when her superiors learned she was HIV positive. She was disowned by her family. She says she discovered she was HIV positive after a fever that lasted for weeks in 1990. A personal doctor suggested a blood test, suspecting immune damage. When the result came back positive, he advised her to keep quiet. "I can't cure the disease," she said, "but I can cure the silence." Prudence traveled across Africa. She sang in refugee camps. She gave speeches in schools. She wrote stage plays about the pain of being HIV positive. But in her final years, the disease itself gradually extinguished her fire. In July 2017, she died in Johannesburg of long-term complications related to HIV/AIDS. Her funeral was not a somber ceremony, it was a parade. The women she helped held her picture and sang the song she used to sing, "We Are Not Afraid Anymore." Prudence didn't just live with HIV, she lived to change the way society views HIV. And if you've ever been silent when someone was stigmatized for their illness, remember the woman who stood in the middle of the world and said, "I am one of you, and I have nothing to be ashamed of." 15. Gracie Cardier. The Muse. The world quietly forgot. Gracie Cardier was once called the unforgettable face of LGBTQ+ fashion shoots in Los Angeles. She is a black transgender model and performer, standing out not only for her beauty, but also for her courage. In an industry that is harsh on transgender people, Gracie has maintained her position with her professionalism and kindness. But behind the gorgeous frames is a body that is silently sick. She has lived with HIV for more than 2 decades. Few people know that because she has never let herself appear weak. One morning in 2001, while putting on makeup to prepare for a photo shoot, Gracie fainted. She recounted in an interview that she woke up in the hospital, where the doctor told her, "We found worrying indicators in her blood." After tests, they confirmed that she was HIV positive. Gracie suspected she had contracted the virus from a relationship when she was young with a transgender woman who did not have access to birth control pills. She did not cry. She simply asked, "How much time do I have left to live a full life?" Gracie did not choose to remain silent. She began to participate in talks, write articles, and take photos with the message of living positively with HIV. But the disease did not let go. In her final years, she suffered from constant lung infections. Every time she struggled to stand on stage, she had to inhale oxygen before stepping into the spotlight. In 2022, Gracie died at home. On the wall are still hung photos she had taken of herself to inspire other transgender women. A message she once wrote, "I am most beautiful when I am true to myself." No media, no major newspapers reported it. But to those who saw her, who were hugged by her heart without judgment, Gracie was a star. If you ever saw a beautiful person walking and wondered what world she came from, it might be Gracie, who walks through pain with gentle pride. Keep her in your memory. One day you can say, "I knew a woman like that." 14th. Afrea Jefferson, painter of hidden pain. Afrea Jefferson doesn't stand on stage, doesn't release records. But she is a black queer artist who uses painting, dance, and poetry to tell the story of people living with HIV, especially women and transgender people. Born and raised in Atlanta, she knows what it's like to be rejected because of her gender and illness. In her exhibitions, she often performs in front of audiences by writing each word on her skin. "I am not a virus. I am a person." But after each performance, her heart is weary. Afrea discovered she was HIV positive after a severe bout of diaphragmatic hernia in the early 2000s. A doctor took her aside and told her, "We found HIV antibodies in your blood." At that moment, she says, the world froze. No one was with her. No one touched her hand. She believes she contracted the infection from a former lover who had never disclosed his health status. But she doesn't blame anyone. From that moment on, Afrea began a new artistic journey, no longer for beauty, but for truth. Her paintings with real blood have been controversial, but also make people look back. She has held exhibitions in churches, community centers, and rehabs where HIV/AIDS is still taboo. By 2021, her body was failing. Her best friend said that at her last exhibition, Afrea still tried to stand up amid pain, reciting the last verse. "If death is the last thing you remember of me, then remember that I lived to help you not to be afraid." She died a few days later at the age of 52. There was no big funeral, just a small prayer and an unfinished painting with the words "unfinished but not forgotten." Afrea did not need a fancy gallery. She needed a world that looked into the eyes of people with HIV and did not back down. If you have ever been afraid when someone told you that you were positive, remember Afrea, who used her own body to say what no one else dared to say. 13. Egypt Labasia. The last rose of the House of Labasia. In the world of New York ballrooms, where drag and transgender dancers walk like queens in the dim light, no one does not know Egypt Labasia. She is the last member of the original House of Labasia, one of the pioneers of Black and Latinx queer ballroom culture. With her platinum blonde hair and piercing gaze, Egypt is more than just an artist. She is a symbol of survival, of pride, and of those who have lost so much to HIV/AIDS. Egypt once shared in a community sharing session that she discovered she was HIV positive after an unusually long bout of flu in 2003. She went to the doctor in a worried mood because many of her friends in the house had died of AIDS. When the doctor gave her the results, she did not cry. She just asked, "How can I live long enough to teach my kids to protect themselves?" It is believed that she contracted the disease during the heyday of ballroom dancing, when relationships were often hidden. But Egypt never lamented her past. She used her own story to teach the next generation. She went to schools, churches, even prisons, carrying her story and dignity as a person once rejected by society. In her later years, Egypt battled complications from HIV, but she still performed, still appeared at conferences, still maintained her proud demeanor. In 2020, she passed away quietly. No red carpet, no television, just ballroom members old and new, standing in a circle, lighting candles, and chanting her name 3 times, Egypt, Egypt, Egypt. Some people walk like the wind, leaving a lasting impression. Egypt Labasia was one of them. If you ever thought you weren't strong enough to overcome the pain, think of her, who turned it into a crown and walked like the world was hers. If you've come this far with us, you've heard the voices that a generation ignored. 10 souls have died, not because they weren't talented enough, but because they were pushed to the margins of society. The journey ahead will be even more painful, but it's also where you'll understand why silence kills more people than disease. If all 23 were famous white artists, would the world have let them die alone? 12th, Chili Pepper, Chicago's last fireflower. In Chicago, anyone who has ever set foot on the LGBTQ+ stage knows Chili Pepper, the transgender drag queen with fiery eyes and a passionate heart. She was not only a performer, but also a symbol of a generation fighting against stigma, fear, and HIV/AIDS. As someone who was openly HIV positive, Chili Pepper once said on the radio, "I'm not afraid of dying of HIV. I'm afraid of dying and having no one remember that I lived." In 2015, when she began to suffer from insomnia, weight loss, and frequent fevers at night, she knew something was wrong. A close friend who worked in the medical field advised her to get a comprehensive test. When the results came back positive for HIV, Chili did not shed a tear. She simply asked, "How many more nights will I be able to stand?" As the disease slowly ate away at her body, she continued to perform, still walking with a smile and a long, flowing dress. But the pain gradually weakened her. In early 2024, Chili Pepper breathed her last breath in a community care center with a former co-star holding her hand. On the table was a wig that had not been worn yet. That image made many people unable to hold back their tears. Chili once said that she performed not to be applauded, but so that others would not feel lonely. And today, if you are listening to her story, keep her in your heart. Because there are artists who do not need a title, they just need to be remembered as a person who dared to live authentically. 11th, Lady Java. The first figure to step out of the band. Before the era of pride parades, before the term trans visibility, Lady Java appeared. She was the first black transgender woman who dared to sue the Los Angeles government for banning women imitators from performing in public. She was more than just a stage performer. She was a living monument with a deep voice, seductive dance moves, and experienced eyes that saw through all prejudices. But inside her body, there was a long-standing, silent battle: AIDS, which she rarely mentioned in public. Lady Java's longtime partner said she began to decline in 2018. She was often tired, had a poor appetite, and had recurring pneumonia symptoms. Despite surviving periods of discrimination, HIV was what made her reluctant to go out. When the doctor confirmed her condition, she sighed. This is the price of a life without regrets. It is not known where she contracted the virus. It may have been in the wilds of the 1970s, when information about HIV was obscure and safe sex was an alien concept. But she never blamed anyone. She only said, "I loved for real." Lady Java died in 2023. There was no large funeral, but hundreds of people lit candles at the entrance to the theater where she performed. They said nothing, just played an old recording of hers. Laughter and singing echoed. If you've ever lived in silence out of fear, think of Lady Java. She broke the rules, not to rebel, but so that others could live more freely. And her death, though silent, is a reminder. Never accept silence when speaking the truth can save someone. 10. Marsha P. Johnson. The Last Breath of Rebellion. Marsha P. Johnson was not a traditional singer, but she was the loudest voice of an entire movement. The black transgender woman, once considered a monster in the eyes of society, became the first person to throw a glass bottle at the police at the Stonewall Uprising. Few people know that Marsha was also a performer, a former member of the queer theater group Hot Peaches, who used the stage to talk about discrimination, HIV, and the pain of being left out. In her later years, Marsha complained of constant pain, fatigue, rapid weight loss, and mouth ulcers. A close friend, Sylvia Rivera, believed that she had contracted HIV but had not been diagnosed or had not sought treatment for fear of rejection. She once said at a group meeting, "If I die of AIDS, I will die fighting." In July 1992, Marsha's body was found floating in the Hudson River. Police initially ruled it a suicide, but the LGBTQ+ community knows that it was more than just a death. It was the result of discrimination, of abandonment, of leaving someone with HIV homeless, without medication, without protection. The truth about Marsha's death remains controversial to this day. But what is undeniable is that she lived as a warrior. And if you think a poor trans HIV-positive person can't change history, you haven't heard of Marsha. 9. Miki Blanco. The world's punk poet who no one dares to sing. In the testosterone-filled world of rap, Miki Blanco emerged as a singular scream. She was a queer, femme-presenting artist who wasn't afraid to wear a dress, wear lipstick, and take to the stage with blunt, sharp lyrics. Miki not only broke gender boundaries in music, but also broke the silence about a disease that once turned the world away: HIV. In 2015, she publicly announced her positive status in a Facebook post. No fanfare, no long explanations, just a simple line. "I am Miki. I have been living with HIV since 2011. Before that, Miki had to hide her illness for fear of losing her chance to perform. She said she felt weak with frequent minor infections, but initially thought it was due to her busy schedule. A friend on her European tour noticed recurring cold sores. It was her friends urging that she get tested. The results left her devastated and silent. She suspected she had contracted the disease from a previous relationship, a man who had refused to be tested. The biggest shock was not knowing she was infected, but knowing that the entire industry she was in would drop her as soon as the news got out. And they did. She lost a few gigs. Some people pulled out of her events, but she refused to bow out. Instead, Miki wrote a song called "High School Never Ends," about loneliness, discrimination, and her battle with her own body. Although her health is stable now, thanks to timely treatment, she has never forgotten the initial feeling, the feeling of being turned away by the world because of a test. Miki is not dead, but she has had to live as if every day were her last time singing. If you ever thought that HIV only attacks the weak, look at Miki. She does not ask for pity. She demands recognition. And if you are brave enough to look at the truth, she will show you that people like her do not have to disappear. 8. Kia Labasia, the child who carries the virus, but not the fear. Kia Labasia did not enter this world by choice. She was born with HIV, inherited from her infected mother in a time when treatment was virtually non-existent. But instead of letting the disease become her destiny, Kia turned it into a light. She is a ballroom artist, visual photographer, and art activist who uses each frame, each catwalk step to tell the story of children who carry the virus in silence. Kia discovered she had HIV at a very young age, but the special thing is that her mother did not hide it. Once Kia asked her mother, "Why do I have to take medicine every day?" She answered frankly, "Because you are very special. You have something that society does not understand." At that time, Kia was only 6 years old. She grew up amidst hospitalizations, fearful looks from teachers, and wariness from parents of classmates. But Kia never let that kill her confidence. In 2015, Kia made a turning point in her career when she published the photo series 24, depicting the process of living with HIV with dim light, cold darkness, and bewildered children's eyes. Viewers could not take their eyes off. She said, "I don't want children like me to grow up in silence." Although still alive, Kia once admitted that her immune system was much weaker than that of normal people. There were times when she was exhausted and could not stand, but she still tried to perform because she knew the audience needed a representative. Kia does not sing, but each photo, each dance step of hers, carries the echoes of a silent generation that has been forgotten. And if you ever thought HIV was just fear, Kia will show you. Sometimes a child with the virus is the one with the biggest heart. Let her steps be engraved in your memory, because she stepped out of destiny to become herself. 7. Tori Cooper, the voice for those who can't be named. Tori Cooper was once a singer who performed on small stages in Georgia, but her voice was only part of who she was. As a Black HIV-positive transgender woman, she has become an activist, a health educator, and the first transgender person to sit on the President's HIV/AIDS Advisory Council. But to get there, Tori had to live with decades of stigma, not just for her illness, but for her very existence. She found out she was HIV positive in the early 2000s. During a routine visit to the clinic, the nurse informed her that she needed further testing. The results didn't surprise her. Her ex had left her without saying goodbye, leaving her with doubts. But what hurt her was the way the doctor delivered the results, coldly, unemotionally, and quickly moving on to the next patient. Tori said that night she didn't sleep, she didn't cry. She stared at the ceiling and thought, "I'm not going to let this virus define who I am." From there, she went out and started speaking to transgender support groups, teaching them how to prevent disease, how to protect each other when society didn't. Although her health is now under control, Tori has suffered 2 serious bouts of pneumonia due to her weakened immune system. But every time she got up, she stood in front of hundreds of people and said, "We don't spread HIV, we spread survival." That line has become a rallying cry for thousands of young queer people of color. If you ever thought of people with HIV as helpless victims, meet Tori Cooper. She's not an individual voice. She's the voice of a community that was once silenced. And she's still fighting, not to live, but to let everyone live. 6. Toshi Reagan, the guitarist of Silent Pain. Toshi Reagan is not a household name, but in the Black queer community, she is the unyielding instrument of wounded hearts. The daughter of Bernice Johnson Reagan, Toshi has inherited both traditional music and the will to resist. Throughout her career, she has written and performed songs related to justice, discrimination, and HIV/AIDS. One night in 2004, while singing, she suddenly stopped. Later, relatives confirmed that she had been diagnosed with HIV not long before. She suspected that she had contracted the disease from an unclear relationship in the late 90s. She did not make a big announcement, but her music gradually changed. Her lyrics became more somber and painful. During her hospitalizations due to exhaustion, Toshi still tried to pick up her guitar and go to bed to play for other patients. "I'm not a symbol," she said. "I just don't want anyone to die without hearing a tune." 5. Mhel Negioello, the whisperer of those who dare not speak. Mhel Negioello once shook the neo-soul R&B wave with her silence in music. As a Black bisexual artist, she not only crossed gender lines, but also confronted prejudices about illness. Although she never publicly announced her HIV status, she shared that many of her relatives had died of AIDS. In a 2007 interview, she said, "I don't know how long I have. I just know that music is how I love them again." Throughout her career, Mhel wrote many songs about loss and discrimination, including Loyalty, inspired by a former lover who was dumped because he was HIV positive. She once fainted after a show in Berlin, exhausted from the depression and anxiety that followed the death of her boyfriend. But she did not retreat. Mhel survived, but her wounds never healed. The music she left behind is a whisper of forgotten souls. 4. Octavia Y. Lewis, the spiritual mother of the survivor community. Octavia Y. Lewis is more than just a singer. She is an activist, teacher, and mother to hundreds of young Black LGBTQ+ people. She has lived with HIV since the early 2000s and has turned her survival into a tool for healing. Octavia says she learned she was HIV positive after suffering from a long-standing infection in her neck. When the doctor said, "We found the virus," she nodded and simply asked, "How much more work do I have to do?" No one saw her fall apart. Despite being hospitalized multiple times, Octavia spoke at schools, prisons, and hospitals, using her story as an example. She taught people that they don't have to be perfect, just be honest, and not be ashamed to be real. Octavia is not dead, but every day she lives is a battle. And every time she sings, one more person no longer feels alone. If you ever thought HIV was the end, listen to Octavia, who turned it into a preface to courage. 3. Diz, the voice that stands on the line between discrimination and freedom. As a member of the queer pop group Rivers, Diz not only impresses with his rich voice and captivating performance style, but also with his rare courage. In 2020, he publicly announced that he was HIV+ in a sharing video. The story began when he kept having a fever at night and swollen lymph nodes. The doctor confirmed that he was positive, and Diz kept quiet. But after a week, he said, "I will not let the silence kill me." Even though his health was at a low point, Diz still stood on stage, waving to thousands of audiences. He sang not to be heard, but to erase his fear. For Diz, HIV isn't the end, it's a reason to live for those who haven't dared to speak out. 2. Jade Electra, DJ of the Survivors. Jade Electra isn't a mainstream diva, but to the drag community and those living with HIV, she's a living icon. A DJ, singer, and activist, Jade founded Pause Planet, a support group for HIV+ people of color. She found out she was positive after a bout of flu in the 2000s. When she heard the results, she simply said, "I know, but I need confirmation to fight." Since then, Jade has performed in hospitals, rehab centers, and clubs, wherever her vocals are needed. Despite repeated hospitalizations, she still gets up and dresses in glitter like there's no tomorrow. Jade lives like a disco song that never stops, loud, colorful, but full of wounds. 1. Tiona Nekia McLaughlin, the collective scar recorder with light. Tiona Nekia McLaughlin is a visual artist, filmmaker, and playwright. She tells stories not only with words, but also with space, light, and silence. In her works, she recreates the legacy of Black queer people who died of AIDS. Although she is not infected, she lives as a bearer of memories of an entire generation that has been erased. When she found the diary of an old HIV+ friend, she said, "If I don't tell it, no one will know they existed." Tiona was devastated after the deaths of 3 friends in the same year. But instead of giving up, she created Be Alarmed as a reminder to society. Those who died were not killed by the virus, but by being forgotten. In a world that denies the truth, they still sing about freedom and identity. Each person on this list is a brave soul, fighting pain, illness, and social silence. By listening to their stories, we are helping to heal a great wound in history. We are grateful to you for choosing to listen instead of turning away. These artists cannot tell their stories, but you can help spread the word. Please like, share, and leave a comment to add a voice to the journey to eliminate discrimination. Because every small action today can save a life tomorrow.